So within the sort of dry lab area, there's a number of things that could happen. One of the areas of survey I'll briefly introduce you to is the seafloor mapping, and this is how we try and understand what the habitats and structure of the seafloor are. As you've probably sort of heard these things, that we know more about the surface of the moon or the stars than we do about the seafloor. It's largely true. A lot of it remains unmapped, and indeed even in Belfast Loch, some of the maps and charts of the loch there have depths that are measured by techniques called lead lining, which is basically a weight on a bit of string. So we're talking quite old techniques. So nowadays we're using much more modern techniques for mapping the seafloor. I'll throw you over to a wee presentation that my colleague Anika had put together. And we're using techniques to create maps based around multi-beam sonar. And what we have, if I turn this into a presentation, are an awful lot of sonar heads. And you've all heard of sonar and aware of sort of active acoustics pinging down through the water column. So a sonar unit on the ship is sending out, rather than just something like on a normal ship that tells you the depth, it's sending out hundreds and hundreds of focused beams, and each of these beams is calibrated by what's called a motion reference unit that tells you the ship's heave and yaw and pitch and movement, so we can then build up a picture of the seafloor down to centimetres of resolution in some cases, if we really sort of take our time at it. So using those, we start to build maps, and we create a picture of a seafloor. This is a reef somewhere off towards Islay, I think it was. And we build up these relief maps of the seafloor and put on other aspects of acoustic information, like how hard it is or the angle of slope. And these are really important things that tell us about what may or may not be living there. Then we get the crayons out in a computerized sense and start to create these maps. And we say, oh, blue, that'll be crabs, and pink, that'll be starfish. So simplifying a little bit, because I don't know how to do it. It's one of my sort of slightly more clever colleagues who puts all this together. So we create the maps of what we anticipate to be there, this is judged on the acoustic characteristics. And then we get these maps. They can be built up with geology, so we can understand the rock structures underneath. This is a seabed form that's just north of the Maidens, outside Larne. So what we see here is an igneous plug, and some of the igneous rock structures beneath it. And we'll have three-dimensional constructs of the actual shape and predictions of what will be growing on it. And after that, that's when we go to work, get out on deck and start sampling the animals. So you were seeing video as you came in, and then behind you at the back of the room there's video running of cameras moving across the seafloor. So by using a combination of cameras and a combination of grabs or trawls and dredges, we start to actually sample what's in there, and the scientists get to work on identifying the animals, cataloguing the biodiversity. This was just a few weeks back. In some of that foul weather, you can see a few of the guys here out on deck sieving the mud, trying to find out what was living in the mud. So it goes on year round, some fairly ropey days as well as lovely days like this. And the reason we do it, we need to understand what's on the seafloor, so we can understand the interactions with fisheries, we can understand things for conservation designations, rare species, and other pressures such as developments, like whether it's wind farms or tidal turbines. And it's all about protecting that environment is our rationale for it. So moving on, I'll finish off there. These are just some of the charts and maps that are showing areas that have been mapped. So for example, here's a corridor of seafloor that was mapped for a potential power cable running from a tidal turbine site. And here's other areas that have been mapped around the back of Rathlin. So a number of reasons for doing it. But as you can see, these are just, these are maybe a week's work or more has gone into doing this tight little area. So it's quite labour intensive, and to cover the whole sort of our territorial waters would be more than we could bite off in a few days' work.